The sons of God have returned. Error. The wicked want the world to continue. The righteous see the end coming. Change is coming, we can all feel it. It's the end of a cycle, the age of Aquarius 3D timeline breakdown, end times return of God, whatever you call it. Our entire generation is fixated on an event that seems to be outside of our imagination. In these perilous times, who is the God we should call out to?
The Earth rotates on its axis every 24 hours. Around once in 27 days, the Sun also rotates on its axis. Its average distance from the Earth is approximately 150 million kilometers, 93 million miles. It is an average distance because the Earth's orbit around the Sun is not fixed.
If we have a good look at our solar system and how it works, for instance, the Moon goes around the Earth in turn is rotating and orbiting the Sun. So it takes 365 days to go around the Sun. Now our Sun in turn is orbiting Sirius. Sirius being the brightest star in the sky and in the sector of Cancer.
Most people have never heard of the orbit of Sirius or the changing ages, because our school system intentionally dumbs us down. First, I will show you the undeniable truth that we are locked in an orbit with Sirius. Then, you will know the importance of the changing ages and how to track the future. Nothing under the sun is new. All things move in cycles.
They go around each other clockwise. And it takes 24,000 years to do one circle. Okay? When we come close to each other like this, we're in the golden age. So it's a long time. It's about a good solid 10,000 years the golden age lasts. Then we start going to what's called the silver age because of the distance now. There's more distance, you see. They're parting from each other and they're saying goodbye. Bronze age. Dark age. Simple as that. You can see that.
The first proof that we will look at is the elliptical shape of Earth's orbit.
The orbit we go around the sun, and it's changing over a period of thousands of years.
We're in an elliptical orbit around the sun. Let's put the sun here. So when we orbit the sun, it's not like this. It's not in the middle, and it's not a pure circle. It's a bit like that.
It's important to remember that the sun is moving. This is what causes the elliptical shape of the Earth's orbit around it. Because by the time the Earth got back to its spot, the sun has already moved so many miles, and the Earth has to go farther to catch back up to that same spot.
We need only look at the orbit of the moon to see this great truth. Because the moon's orbit around Earth mirrors the Earth's orbit around the sun.
Moon that orbits anti-clockwise around our anti-clockwise rotating Earth. Right? Now that moon, from that point to there, it will get to there in 27 days. It'll go around in 27 days. 27.2 days. But because our Earth is moving, in around about 30 days it'll be there. Okay? Because it's moved from here to here, and it's going to, every 30 days it'll have clocked the orbit, right? It's gone around the orbit. Okay? So 12 months of the year. So it's moved from there to there. So, and it's curving, everything is curving around the sun. So that explains that
it should be easy to see now that the orbit of the moon is elliptical, because it must catch back up to the Earth's orbit. And the Earth is doing the same thing as it circles around the sun, creating the elliptical shape of the orbit. Greedy people that want to control the world know this information will enlighten you, so they hide it, telling us that gravity is falsely behind the shape of the orbit.
This is space, and this is the sun. The larger mass that something has, the deeper actually pulls down space and time. Now you can see why we are actually go around elliptical and not just in a perfect circle around the sun. You see that the marbles actually gain speed when they get closer and slow down when they are farther away. That's why
If that were true, the elliptical orbit would be constant until the planet ran into the sun because of gravity. But our elliptical orbit isn't constant. It fluctuates over thousands of years, from a perfect circle to an oval shape, then back again. This change is due to the orbit of our sun with Sirius.
We go around the sun, and it's changing over a period of thousands of years.
And put Sirius over here. These guys are getting sucked into each other so fast, they're travelling toward each other so fast that this is going on. And that's why you've got January the 1st here. That's a proof that we're in a binary with Sirius.
If this is Earth and this is Sirius, the drag happens in Earth's orbit here, where it has the speed to catch back up with Earth as it's flying towards Sirius in space. So the orbit is elliptical because it's speeding. Okay? So when it's at its farthest spots, it slows down. Here, it goes fast. In the middle, it goes slow. It goes slow at the ends, fast in the middle. It's extremes. Okay? So here, where we were just at, where we're exiting now, the orbit is much more circular, okay? Because it doesn't have that speed. The sun isn't moving fast back towards Sirius or away from Sirius, as it does away and then back towards. Okay?
We know the sun slows down around the extremes of its orbit around Sirius because of studying the orbit of Earth around the sun. It slows down around the extreme of its orbit and speeds up as it gets closer to the sun.
Something very, very fascinating about this construction. Just like in real solar system, as the Earth gets closer to the sun, it speeds up, and as it goes farther out, it slows down. It is not obvious.
This is important to us on Earth because the orbit dictates our seasons. The more elliptical orbit, the greater the change in the seasons. The more circular orbit, the calmer the weather. The change in weather is so dramatic that this is what causes the ice ages on Earth.
The point where the Earth is closest to the Sun is annually, at the beginning of January. So, in July, the Earth is farthest from the Sun. This is summer in the Northern Hemisphere. Because of the distance, the Earth receives less energy from the Sun. The ice in the Northern Hemisphere melts less quickly. This could be the beginning of an ice age. If there is a circular shape, the Earth is closer to the Sun at the beginning of July. This gives the Northern Hemisphere more energy and the ice melts.
The glacial onset, its slow but steady increase in global temperatures marking the beginning of the end for the glacial period. It usually lasts several tens of thousands of years. This is often driven by changes to Earth's orbit called Milankovitch cycles. These predominantly relate to how the Earth is angled or orbiting around the Sun. Starting with eccentricity, it describes the Earth's orbit around the Sun and measures how much the orbital path deviates from a perfect circle. This can vary from 0, it's a perfect circle, to around 0.067, it's more of an oval or an ellipse. Currently, the eccentricity is around 0.017, so we are pretty circular in our orbital nature. When the
eccentricity. Currently, our eccentricity is low. This means that the Earth's orbit is almost a circle. Now
With this information, we can easily track the cycles of our planet. This information is hidden for a reason. When the Sun and Sirius are coming close together, or moving away from each other, the orbit of Earth becomes elliptical, causing the ice ages. At the extreme of the orbit, the farthest away from each other and the closest to each other, the orbit of Earth becomes circular, causing calm weather on the planet. Now let's look at the tilt. This will show us further proof that we are in a binary star system.
And what happens is it kind of changes its tilt. Over thousands of years, it kind of goes back and forth during periods of more tilt and less tilt. So over time, we can either be tilted more towards the sun or not as tilted towards the sun.
So if this is the Earth, the tilt of it is what points to the different North Stars. So right now we have Polaris as our North Star because the tilt is angled towards Polaris. But because of the precession of the equinox, the tilt slowly changes and it will end up being pointed towards another North Star later on. And like you've probably figured out, the tilt is because we are getting dragged behind the sun. We're getting dragged, so it's tilted. It's getting pulled, and then the tilt straightens itself out around the extremes. Around the closest and the farthest point away from Sirius. The tilt straightens itself out because the orbit slows down. The sun is literally moving so fast that it drags the Earth behind it, causing the Earth to tilt over on its axis. The tilt of the Earth changes because we are orbiting Sirius. When we follow the sun in its orbit, we're getting dragged along, and the Earth has to speed to catch back up to the sun. So that changes its orbit. The drag of it is what changes the tilt. At the closest and farthest parts of its orbit with Sirius, the sun slows down like we learned. And that's what causes the tilt to straighten back out.
So when the Earth is more tilted towards the sun, the Earth is going to have more extreme seasons. Okay, so it can kind of go back and forth between 24 degrees and 22 degrees. Right now we're at 23.5 degrees, and this is the main reason that causes our seasons. When we're tilted towards the sun, we get summertime. When we're tilted away from the sun, we are having wintertime. And so if you're more tilted, you're going to have more extreme seasons. If you're more straight up and down, you are going to have less extreme seasons. Okay, so this axis that we're referring to is this line that goes through the North Pole and the South Pole. When that axis is more tilted,
it should now be obvious that we are in a binary,
sunlight is going to be more
and
extreme.
the orbit of this binary controls the changing ice ages on Earth. Now we will see the ancients believed that we evolve or de-evolve along with these ages. You've heard of the precession of the equinox and the age of Aquarius. Let's learn more.
Earth goes through one such complete precessional cycle in a period of approximately 26,000 years. That is almost 1 degree every 72 years or 50 arc-seconds per year. It's a very slow movement and you may not detect it in day-to-day life. Let us place another dial on the ecliptic plane. It represents almost steady positions of all the stars and constellations. There are 12 constellations and 27 nakshatras we are familiar with. Although the amount of precessional motion is very small in a year, positions of the equinoxes change sufficiently over a very long period of time. This positional shift of the equinoctial points is also known as precession of the equinoxes.
Here, and then there's 7 other stars in the north that all see what happens is the North Pole, it's hard to explain, but all these 7, there are 7 stars in the very, very northern hemisphere, and Polaris is sitting closest now to true north. So Polaris is the pole star only for 2,000 years, right? Then it will go to stars like, there's a couple in there's Alpha Draco and Beta Draco, and there's a few more, but there are 7. And these, believe it or not, are more spoken of in prophecy than you would believe. You know.
The Earth also goes through a cyclic wobble. It moves from its current position of the north pointing to the star Polaris to where the north points to the star Vega and returns to pointing at Polaris. The full cycle takes place between 19
Our North
to
Star switches from Polaris
26,000
in the
years.
age of Aquarius to Vega in the age of Leo and back again. These points marked that winter equinox and summer equinox of the great year. Currently we are in the winter, or the ice age, of the great year. The problem is, it's not cold.
Our constellations are a celestial clock. In Western astrology, we are transitioning from the age of Pisces to the age of Aquarius. Each astrological age lasts around 2,147 years and are represented by the 12 zodiac signs of astrology. The completion of the celestial clock is said to be around 25,764 years. All 12 astrological ages combined makes one great year. Each age corresponds to the average time it takes for the vernal equinox to move from one constellation of the zodiac into the next. Astrological ages proceed in the opposite direction, retrograde in astronomy. Therefore, the age of Aquarius follows the age of Pisces. In ancient Vedic astrology, called the Yuga cycle, we are coming to the end of the Kali Yuga age. The Kali Yuga age is represented by Kali, the Hindu goddess who is considered to be the goddess of death, time, and change. The supreme of all powers, the goddess destroys evil in order to protect the innocent. The Holy Science book clarifies that a complete Yuga cycle takes approximately 24,000 years and is comprised of a descending cycle of 12,000 years in which virtue gradually decreases and an ascending cycle of another 12,000 years when virtue gradually increases.
The ancient people called this time we are in the Kali Yuga, the Iron Age or the Dark Ages. We today know this as the Ice Ages.
1970s, people looked at the extinction record on Earth, and every 20,000 years they found a little blip, a little dip in the fossil record where we lost some species, and people were wondering why. Could there have been some flux of comets raining down periodically on the Earth, wreaking havoc on the ecosystem, rendering species extinct in these periodic intervals? If there is, maybe there's some double star to the sun, a binary star system.
Okay, so how this works. When our solar system reaches the farthest spot from Sirius in its orbit, we're in the Dark Age, aka the Ice Age. Based on the rotation of Earth around the sun, how elliptical or how circular, we can track where we're at in the Great Orbit. And we are right about here. We are just exiting the Dark Age. In fact, 2012 was that exit. We exited the Dark Age. Now we're getting ready to speed back up, going through the different ages back to the Golden Age to meet up with Sirius. Okay? That's what we're going through. So every time we're down in the Dark Age, aka Ice Age, the planet freezes over. Just like on Earth, we have the winters and the summer cycles. These cycles happen to restore the planet, to cleanse the planet. Okay? So when our solar system, with sun leading this way, starts to head back towards Sirius, things are going to speed up. This start going really fast, and we're going to get that drag on Earth. The planet's going to tilt over, and we're going to get that drag on it. And what's going to happen is it's going to be a lot of flooding. Every time this happens, there's a great massive flood. Okay, right here's a flood, and right here is a flood. Right when we start to speed up, the Earth tilts over like a cup tipping over, and all the water spills over to one side of the planet. That's why there's more water in the southern hemisphere than the northern hemisphere. Because this whole way here, after the Great Flood that flooded Atlantis, that Noah talks about, all ancient civilizations talk about, the earth tipped over, and all the land masses, continents in the southern hemisphere got flooded. Okay, it tipped over, and it flew back down to the extreme. Things bounced out, they slowed out around the peak of the Dark Age, which was 500 AD. That's when weather things changed and they balanced themselves. But we were also at the lowest human consciousness. 500 AD marked the Dark Ages, the peak of it. Now that we've turned back over and are flying back towards Sirius, the exact opposite is going to happen. We're going to have a polar shift, and the northern hemisphere is going to be flooded, where the majority of people are at. 90% of the human population is in the northern hemisphere, and it's going to die in this end time prophecy. Okay? This is real.
Reverse, and it will go into a period of global warming. And we know that this has happened over time. We've looked at this graph before, how the Arctic temperatures kind of rise and fall. So through the ice cores, we've seen that global warming and ice ages are very natural, and they're also very cyclical. And what we've also seen is from those ice cores is that the carbon dioxide levels tend to follow the temperature patterns. It's a direct relationship to that carbon dioxide level. Okay. Now what we've seen in the last 150 years is that there's something that's not so natural happening here. With the start of the Industrial Revolution and humans burning fossil fuels, we see a sharp increase in the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Okay, so
that doesn't account for the current period of rapid warming, say in the last 100 years here, 1850 to 1900. But the last 150 years, we've also realized that the amount of incoming energy from the sun hasn't changed. So while we can't discard this entirely, it does play some role. It's only one factor of a very complicated system, and you notice I've broken down the number of carbon dioxide molecules that we're seeing increasing due to the Industrial Revolution, human activity. So this is something...
Pay close attention to the very last line. It says we are supposed to be in a time period of cooling. This is 100% true. We are in the winter of the great year, but instead, we are experiencing global warming. A cycle like this has never happened in the history of Earth. What changed over the past 24,000 years to get us to this point?
Okay, so what we're going to uncover in the next part is that after the fall of man, 12,000 years ago, after we reached the peak, human beings left the planet. They knew disasters were coming. Atlanteans, they fled. They went into space, okay? Right after things basically started to go crazy, we have stories about an alien intervention on the planet, a genetic modification of the resident species. And with this modification came knowledge, farming, weaponry, fire. And what we're going to uncover is that the actual burning, the actual farming is what created the CO2 hot pocket that we are experiencing now. Because we're supposed to be in the ice age. Things are supposed to be frozen over to cleanse the planet of the evil. But there was none. There was no ice age because of that alien intervention. Sirius has a planet around it called Nibiru. The Dogon, who we're going to learn about, spoke about a race of people, a race of extraterrestrials that gave them knowledge, okay? So not only are we about to shift back into the Iron Age and tip over, and actually, because okay, when you get into this Iron Age, this side of the Iron Age, because this is Iron Age 2, you're actually slowing down. But this time that we're entering the Iron Age, we're actually speeding up. So we're going to speed up back towards Sirius, and we're going to get a polar shift. You get polar shifts here and here. Polar shift. This is where those shifts happen. Right around the side of the turd. And this would be about 9,000 years ago. Okay? And that's when they give the time period of the flood. 9,000 years ago. Okay?
So now you know the truth. Our planet is locked in an orbit with Sirius. This orbit controls the ice ages and the evolution and extinction events on the planet. We learnt that we should be in the ice age, but we are experiencing global warming due to complex extraterrestrial factors that we will discuss.